and I posted a video saying, why are you making an MMORPG? Stop.
But right now, you're about to start a Kickstarter MMO, and I'm going to tell you why it sucks.
So, before we begin, yes, this is a clickbaity title. I'm being ever so edgy by bucking the norm of indie game dev YouTubers by saying, yes, you can make an MMORPG as your first game. But before you go shouting across multiple comment threads, let me first stem the flow by explaining exactly what I mean by an MMO. The channels that tell you no are generally people that play AAA quality titles from the big studios. When they say MMO, they're talking about a grand scale game like World of Warcraft and New World. Games like this need vast resources, not only for the development of content, but the infrastructure that supports the continued gameplay services. Further, these sorts of games need deep, intricate systems that cater to massive audiences. On this, I agree the answer is no. Nobody can just walk off the street and make one of these games. It requires lots of funding and skill across many fields to make something worthwhile at this level. But this isn't what I consider the be-all and end-all of the MMO genre. Cue my rant. The massive in MMO was meant to represent the greater amount of simultaneous players in a shared virtual environment. I recall days of gaming when minds were blown when the 32 player cap was doubled to 64, and then some games offering up to 100 players were considered massive. Of course, by this time, games in the MMO genre would feature thousands of players, but in most instances, and no pun intended, these player bases were separated into instances held on different servers, effectively limiting the player count to a singular shared space to the low hundreds or even just the 100 player cap. These were still MMOs, but more importantly, an MMO doesn't have to have the mechanics of World of Warcraft. RPG and general gameplay mechanics are up to the developer's discretion, and you don't fail the genre if you don't have a pack of 10 wolves in the starting area that regenerate every 5 minutes to allow the next player the same quest. In fact, your game doesn't even need to have quests. For a contemporary example of this, you can look at Arcadius. This is a free-to-play MMO where all you do is grind out harvesting and socialise with others in a shared space. Years passed. To make an MMO, you needed a talented group of developers that could navigate networking code, and generally speaking, they would develop their own game engine focused on optimising the networked experience, which goes beyond a simple game design. But nowadays, game development engines like Unity and Unreal already offer simple to implement multiplayer mechanics, and in the case of Unity, pre-developed or templated networked RPG systems that with just a few short clicks will let you build and upload a functioning RPG capable of hosting 1,000 players. Some templates include enough mechanics that you could really replicate traditional MMORPGs with only a few days' work and little to no prior knowledge of game design. The technology has reached a point where some of the older technical issues are now resolvable at the individual level. Server hosting can be built into the development engine, allowing simple click setup and infrastructure to host across a global network. Steam integration allows you to utilise pre-existing profile services that remove the need for account management from the developer, which would require a whole host of setup and management for things like subscription payments and maintaining security of user databases. This comes down to another big issue that I find when people on social media give advice to new developers. A lot of the advice tells them to ignore their dream game and focus on smaller, more simple mechanics to create your first game. I'm a hobbyist, so my advice is just as trash as the next YouTube celebrity with zero experience in the industry, but I'm going to give it anyway. If you want to get started in games development as a hobbyist or even as a career, though if it's a career I strongly urge you to undergo formal training from an educational establishment, but in any case, don't start by making games. Making a game is a big effort. It requires a knowledge of design as well as an understanding of how different elements of games development come together to form a game. Making a little game with simple mechanics, whilst it may be a good way for some, is going to destroy your dreams when you hit walls, and the payoff is quite minimal. Instead, I suggest that you don't make a game when you start. Focus on making prototype systems. Focus on individual elements that you would want to see in your dream game. I'm talking things like an inventory system, a singular mechanic that may require a bunch of nuanced features. Just focus on making the core aspect of it. Learn the ins and outs of that mechanic and put it together in its own standalone project. Once you've done that, move on to the next mechanic. By doing this, you're learning more about game development than trying to make a fully enclosed game system that features only a fraction of what each of these elements would require. Another reason not to focus on a smaller game, some people argue that if you don't already have a released game, then you're a wildcard and nobody will want to put money down on your project. But inversely, your small game gets released on Steam amongst a sea of other small games, of people all trying to learn the same as you. The games have no real flavour, and your game tanks because it's just your stepping stone. This doesn't buy you credibility, it just becomes a drag on you and your passion for game development. But this also gets into a deeper argument around game development about seeing things through. This can be difficult for many people, depending on their personality, but it can be argued that working on a stepping stone that you're not totally passionate about can be more detrimental to seeing through to your dream game than actually trying to work on your dream game. And in the end, I want to see more dream games out there. Games development should never be about the money you will get. It should be about the art and the fun of the gameplay. Developers putting out the kind of content that they want to play, because in the end, the player will be able to feel that passion put behind the project, and ultimately we'll all get more joy out of gaming. Is that a horrible take? I don't know.